So again, welcome. Thank you for joining the webinar on how to manage champions and also an update on our new Salesforce update with contact and user creation. Again, for those of you that are not familiar with me, I'm Cecilia Tavel. I work with our customer programs here at Totango. I've been here for about 3.5 years, and I'm very excited to work with all of you and share and collaborate on best practices around customer success. If you have any questions for me directly or want to stay in touch, you can just reach out to me. It's cecilia@totango.com is my email address. So would love to hear from you if you have any questions or just want to brainstorm on anything that's happening within your organization. So for today's agenda, we're going to overview the new settings for Salesforce Sync and user creation. We'll talk about identifying what user level information is key for your business. And we'll discuss some examples of powerful campaigns for managing champions using Totango. So just wanted to highlight some of the new capabilities with the Salesforce Sync. So now you can actually add a Salesforce attributes to existing users in Totango. Before, you were only able to sync account level attributes to Totango, and now you can actually bring in the really key relevant information about your users into Totango. You can also create new users in Totango who have not had any usage. So historically, Totango would create a user automatically if we saw usage from that particular individual. Now you actually have an ability to create these individuals, and sometimes these are your key contacts or maybe executives that don't necessarily use your product, but you want to be able to have their information inside Totango so that you can segment them, so that you can run powerful campaigns with them, things like that. So with this, you essentially will have better way to segment. And these are just some examples: segmentation by business role, region, anything that you collect on the user level, maybe some key information during the sales cycle that is collected, really anything that's meaningful for you to make your campaigns or your messaging or your kind of processes more precise and tuned to the particular individual segment. And so we'll talk about some of these examples in more detail as well. So a quick example or a quick highlight screenshot of the settings section. So if you're not an admin on Totango, you have access to the settings section for any configuration pieces. So the new Salesforce capability with the new contact settings improvements are available within the settings. And this is what it looks like, and I will show it to you within the demo environment so that you can easily navigate to that after the session. Now, if we talk about the specific user level information and what is kind of key information for you as a business, and some of the common examples is obviously business role. Is this a CEO? Is this a project manager? Is this a marketing coordinator? Who are these people, and how relevant is my campaign going to be if I don't have this information? So having that insight available to us is very important. So think about kind of the key data points, key attributes for your users that would be meaningful and powerful to have in Totango. Also, in some cases, you have admin users versus regular users. In Totango, obviously, we have that segmentation, and sometimes the conversations or the specific messages we want to send are really only relevant for an admin to discuss some of the new capabilities around some of the settings sections in our particular case. So think about, do you have this information? Is this information readily available? And if so, then it would be amazing to get that into Totango. If you have Salesforce as your CRM, the new user level sync capability would allow you to bring this information into Totango. Location could be relevant. Maybe you're doing specific campaigns geographically, and maybe you're doing a roadshow, or maybe you're inviting people to a local event, and you would want to segment based on the location of the users. That's also pretty critical. And then as an NPS on the user level. So if you're doing NPS or any sort of surveying, and you want to have some sort of feedback loop and have that NPS score available to you so that you can do some precise campaigns to individuals that maybe didn't score so high, and maybe do something unique with them to get them maybe resurveyed or provide more resources to them. So those are some good examples for you to consider, and you may have some others that are very specific to your specific organization and your business. Now, some powerful campaign examples that we wanted to share, if you think about your key contacts and your champions, sometimes they may not be using your product, but you do want to message them about some of the key feature releases, because some of those key feature releases could be ROI drivers, or they could improve their business bottom line. And they should be aware of those things, even though they may not necessarily, jump in and use those features, but at least they will be informed, and then they can share that information with their team. So that's really important to have. Again, message to key contacts. So, if they don't use your product, we still want to stay in front of them. If there's an annual subscription and your key executive sponsor is the one that signed the deal, but is never going to be, inside your product, you still want to, make sure that they're aware about all the benefits, so that they, things don't just go kind of under the radar, and the renewal rolls around, and that individual is, has forgotten about your tool and all the powerful capabilities that it can deliver to the table. Again, campaigns, for admin versus user, location-based campaigns and PS-based campaigns. So one example of a new feature intro. So new feature intro to key contacts. So they're not using your product, but letting them know about important updates may drive ROI. And we'll, kind of walk through some key examples of how to do this in Totango when you build campaigns. Admin-only campaigns. So as I mentioned before, some features of your product may only be relevant to specific users based on their role or their business function. So having that segmentation and that user level data is very key as well. So for us, for example, this particular webinar, and some of the specific features addressed in this webinar are key to admins. Regular users may not have information or access to configuring or integrations with Salesforce for this particular case. So segmenting to the right audience at the right time is key. And inviting executive level users to specific workshops and roadshows. Some of these, could be your VIP dinners, or maybe some lunch and learns, and those could be, for specific audience only. So having the user level information about the business level role would be really powerful for you as well. So something that's interesting with NPS, and if you are using some sort of surveying NPS and track that and have a score associated with your users, then you can really drive some follow-up. So making sure that the low NPS scores get extra attention and follow-up. So you can definitely structure a campaign around it, and then improve the situation, resurvey the individual, and get a better score and get better feedback, in the future rounds. We miss you and thank you campaigns. So if your regular users, maybe your power users or even key contacts are not active regularly, you can have a campaign structure to bring them back into your product. So something to incite them to log back in and do something important. And I think also showing gratitude and saying thank you are very, very important, items in customer success. I think everyone appreciates a warm word or a token of, of appreciation. And this is something you can also drive through Totango for your key contacts, your super users, essentially anyone you want to recognize for their good efforts and their loyalty to your organization. So I wanted to also point you to resources that we have. It's also part of our documentation site. So if you remember this URL, I can also forward it after the call. But basically, there's some specific information, and there's some instructions as to how to get the contact level sync enabled. I'll also point you to where this is within the product, but there is also supporting documentation if you needed to refer back to it and need some help in getting it configured. There are some resources documented for you. And then moving on from here, I'm going to actually jump out of the presentation and go directly into Totango and highlight some of the information that we covered. Also, just to let you know, if you are coming up with some questions or have anything you would want to ask, you can type in your questions into the question box, and we will cover those questions at the end of the session. So going into the Totango instance, the specific area for the Salesforce capabilities now, if you are an admin, you will see this within the settings section. And if I expand that, it's going to be within the Salesforce component. And here you can actually, if you go directly to the contact settings piece, this is where you can specify if you want to sync contacts. And you can also specify the specific contact object, the Salesforce contact field that contains the individual's information, and also your account bind field, where the ID lives, so that we can properly map. And then you can actually define the specific attributes. So you will need to select the user level data on your Salesforce on the contact level that you would want to map and bring into Totango. So for example, those things that we talked about earlier, the role of the individual, maybe their location, any end user, data points that you have tracked that are real relevant and meaningful. So you can specify and map them, and Totango will sync them in. And this is where you will be able to walk through that process. Also, the other piece of this new capability is the ability to create contacts from Salesforce and bring them into Totango. So that example that I mentioned about individual execs, for example, that will never have usage in your product, but you want to make sure that there's a record for them in Totango. Those users, once they're created, will have an attribute on the user level called CRM contact. So you will know that they were created from your CRM. So that's another thing you can enable when you go through this process. You can also create contacts from Totango to Salesforce. So if there are users, for example, let's say Totango sees for the first time an end user and creates them automatically inside Totango, and maybe that end user actually does not have a record inside Salesforce yet. So Totango can also do the reverse and create that individual end user inside your Salesforce instance for you. So this is where you can walk through that particular setup. Again, there is supporting documentation for this. And also, if you have any challenges or need help, our support team can assist you with getting that fully configured. So moving on to some of the examples that I wanted to cover and continue on is going to be really in the campaigns, because I think that this enhancement really helps if you are using Totango for your customer campaigns, or if you're looking to start using Totango for that. This is where the magic happens, and where you'll have a really fine-tuned way to segment your audience and deliver the right targeted message to the right customer at the right time. So some examples that I already prepared here, just to give you some ideas as to what that could potentially look like, is one campaign for low NPS follow-up. So basically, I set up a campaign that's going to be just my own custom campaign. So I'm going to, decide how to customize it. I have specified my criteria to look at customers that are paying and have the end users have an NPS score of less than 9. So essentially anything that's less than 9, there are people that are kind of detractors and people that are just neutral. So you want to make sure you at least follow up with everyone that scores below 9 and deliver a very specific message. And the message, really, the body of the message is customizable, so you can decide what the right message would be. What is the subject line? I just kind of played around with this and said, how are we doing? Please rate us again. But you can really, have a process around this and then cater your message based on, what are you looking to drive here? What are you looking to achieve with this particular message? And how do you want to help, improve the feedback that you have gathered from this customer? If you're not familiar with the campaigns capability, I just want to highlight a couple of key things. So whenever you build a campaign, you can actually add specific data, and you can really pick the specific attribute that you want to infuse inside the body of the message. So I want to address this campaign to to somebody, and I pick the first name. If for some reason I don't have a first name, I can just have a fallback on any of the data points, and I can just say hi there instead. Also, within the body of the message, wherever you place your cursor, you can add data. And this data can be either on the account level or on the user level. So any user level attribute that is associated with the end user, you can infuse. So for example, if there was something about the end user that you're tracking, maybe their department or something like that. So you can say you're of department X. And we noticed that, customers that are in similar departments, do well with X, Y, and Z. So there's a lot of ways that you can make the message really, really tuned to the individual based on the data that you are sending into Totango by enhancing and infusing these data points within the body of the message. So those are just some examples. Once you're obviously done with your customization and you're happy with your message, you can preview it. You can, test how it looks, send yourself a test message, and then launch your campaign. So that's one quick example. I have a couple others. And again, this can be really dependent on your own process and what types of emails do you like to send, or what are you looking to do with, your kind of campaigns. Something that I found here is the parole segmentation campaign. So maybe sending a message to the CEOs only, or C-level executives for something very specific. And again, if you are sending that user level information, it's very easy to select it. So I have just paying customers and my role is the CEO. And the way I get that data is I just basically look for my user level attributes. I have specified a role, but if there's something else I'm looking for, then I can simply find that user level attribute. I can, find it in here. Maybe I'm looking for a specific business unit, and I like to use as one of, and then I can click in here, and then I can select my business unit. So there's a lot of different interesting things that you can do if you have the user level data to support your campaigns, to make them more powerful and impactful. So for your CEOs, again, the same process. You will go through your customization of your message and send a very targeted and relevant campaign to the executive level users. So that's one quick example. And the last example that I had for this is going to be We Miss You campaign. So because Totango knows what your customers are doing within the product, how much, what was their last login date or usage date, you can really, get them back into the product. So as soon as you see that there's a usage drop, you can really bring them back with something really insightful, or something really like, that will drive them back into your solution. So my criteria here was my user is the account key contact. So I only want a message to my key contacts. And the last activity date was over 7 days ago. So that's a problem, right? I want my key contacts, my executive champions, to be in my product. I don't want them to go quiet. So I can really customize my message and bring them back. And then my goal can be, so with the goals, the nice thing about the goal is that because Totango knows, what your users are doing and how much, you can actually specify this. And what I'm doing, because they haven't had any activity in the last 7 days, I want to specify my goal is that their activity will be, in the next day. So I want to drive them back into the product. And then once I launch my campaign, I can actually go back and see how I'm doing as far as meeting my goal. My subject here is don't miss ROI opportunities, log in to check your progress today. Just something very like generic, but obviously you can tune it to your needs. And then again, same thing. I can preview my message and make sure everything looks good, everything's aligned. If you guys are using templates with logos and banners, that becomes even more important. This is a simple text message, so I'm not super worried about it. But when you use the rich templates, you want to make sure you thoroughly send yourself test messages and tweak anything as far as formatting is concerned to make sure everything looks perfect. And then the last piece, I'll just continue, is the scheduling piece. So you can actually schedule your campaign. And the nice thing about Totango's campaigns is you have a lot of different capabilities within the scheduling. You can schedule it right away, where the message will go out right away. You can schedule it for later, so you can actually specify the date and time when the message will go out. You can have an ongoing campaign. So anytime in this particular case, when my executive champion or key contact does not have any activity in 7 days or over 7 days, the campaign will be an ongoing campaign. So anytime that the criteria is met, the email will go out. So you don't need to worry about relaunching anything. It will be kind of on autopilot for you, which is really, really convenient. And then you can also do an ongoing schedule for later. And then there's also recurring campaigns. So if you guys see our weekly Monday morning emails that are those are called success beats. Those are recurring emails. So basically the email is the same, except the data or the variables fluctuate within the body of the message. But it's essentially it's the same campaign, and recurring means that it's going to the same group of people at the same kind of cadence. So every Monday, the email goes out to the same group of people, but obviously the data changes because there are fluctuations in how the customer is using the product. So the variables change. Everything else stays the same as far as the the message and the audience. So with that, that kind of wraps it up for me. At this point, I want to let you guys, if you have any questions, type them into the chat window, and I'll pause for just a little bit to see if there are any questions. And if you've gotten all your questions answered, thank you so much for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you at our next session. Again, we have these sessions weekly. Please feel free to check out our resources page on the Totango training section that I showed earlier, and sign up for any upcoming webinars. But again, thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, stick around for the next couple of minutes. Otherwise, I'll look forward to seeing everyone again soon. Thank you so much.